for us as we started to talk about what we need to do as part of this larger data governance committee in the GovAI Coalition was really to have two streams of work here. One was having a data governance strategy in place, again, focusing more on how do we make our data more ready for AI use. And then the second stream of work was more around data sharing, just the challenges that we've encountered in terms of how difficult it can get with sharing data with multiple agencies. So those are the two streams of work that we've talked about in the past that is a general consensus that is the need. I think Texas is probably the model where the data sharing work has come from, that we all have seen the benefits from that. And if we could have like a larger, like a data sharing co-op of some sort that would help facilitate data sharing and make it faster for us to share data as between the agencies, I think that'll speed up a lot of the work that we're doing. But then at the data governance strategy, going back to the first one, I think that's a much larger initiative, and it might just scope into multiple smaller working groups. But to begin with, I think the idea was that we have we build together a generalized template for data strategy that all government agencies can leverage and use and build upon. That was the initial idea. And then as we dig deeper into how that is going to be put into use, maybe we can talk about the different areas where the combined work needs to be done that we can then scope from there. But to initially begin with, I think the template is what we were planning to start with. Anything I missed that needs to be covered here?
Go for it, Jonathan.
Yeah, just some, I think, questions for the group. I'd be curious how many in the group have a data governance strategy published. And maybe just reply in chat with a yes if you've got one. Just curious to take a quick cross-section of some of the group and see how many have it. You know, for instance, San Diego, we have a administrative regulation related to our data governance policy that's very close to being published and out there. And we're I'd say in progress as far as the considerations around AI as it relates to all of that. But just curious, because I think looking at the Q2 goal of reviewing available templates and a draft data governance strategy, just taking what we can from the group and getting that together by the end of June was the goal. Seeing what we have to work with out there. So I'm seeing some chime into the chat here. Sounds like more have it in the works. Some are still working towards that yet. So it looks like a good cross section. And I think that's the big help here for the group. If you haven't gone down that road yet, you know, this is an opportunity to work with everybody else in the committee here to get a template together. See some work with Gartner. I think they've got some good resources. And I see Modesto looking to get one published in June. So that sounds like that one's making good progress. Good to hear. All right, so just looking at the chat here, looks like we've got what we would expect. I think a good cross section of some working towards it, some getting close, and some just going down the road to begin it.
And right to that point, the goal, as we see on this slide, is walking away with a template similar to what we have with our other, our AI policy templates, our vendor agreement templates, similar to all of our other coalition templates, a plug and play template that folks can use across their organizations that not only covers data governance in general, but as we've discussed here, adding in what that data governance shifts are relative for, to adapt to AI. And on top of that, as RT mentioned, right, the data sharing, which is the other side of this approach. And to that point, I can, oh, sorry, RT, do you want to jump in?
I was just curious, just so that we get some food for thought for this working group, for this committee, for folks who have had a data governance in place, what are some of the challenges? Like I see Brad has posted that, it's the adherence to the policy has been a challenge. Like that has been our concern as well. I'm just curious for folks who already have something in place. How has the compliance been with respect to that data governance that you have in place? Success, failure, things that have worked, things that haven't.
And I'd be curious too, just how you get to drive adoption. Just use an example from City of San Diego. We have a data inventory, data classification. So I think a lot of work there, and then named data coordinators in each city department. That the goal being keeping updates on those, the data classification, the data inventory, an overall goal of being able to share that data across multiple departments to get more value out of it, and just thinking about how that ties into objective number 2 down below, establishing data sharing between government agencies. So chime in and chat if you do have a data sharing agreement that could be, I think, valuable for this committee as an example of a data sharing agreement. And they'll probably vary depending on location, type of agency. We've got one in the way of a GIS, Joint Powers Authority with the County of San Diego, where we're sharing GIS data. I think that's been around for quite some time, and I think been very successful. But that was not only a data sharing agreement; it really was in terms of a joint powers authority to accomplish that well. So curious if you've got also a data sharing agreement that you might be able to share with the group. All right, I see in some chat we've got a couple that have some agreements that they can share. That's great. I think that's a good starting point for the available templates for Q2 there and the second objective.
This is Broward County CIO, Dominic speaking. I have a quick question. I'm new to the group here. I want to ask a question that we are beginning to formulate around our governance for data and data sharing is on the notion of HIPAA and covered entities. How have you started to address that part yet, or is that coming soon? We are, in our agency, we do the HIPAA compliancy piece from the security rule perspective. We have several covered entities in that regard. So it's a matter of education, but how are you going to handle that piece? I know San Diego, California has significant amount of covered entities and healthcare data for citizens. Do you have any guidelines about that going forward that perhaps can be talked about as a specific track in data sharing around covered entities?
I think that's a really good question, and the county of San Diego has the health services, so luckily it's not another area that we've got to work on through with the city outside of their homelessness services, things like that, where we do have some crossover. But I think that's a really good area, especially at the county level, where you do have that HIPAA data. And there's more, more scrutiny, more, security.
And there isn't. We're going through our HIPAA assessment right now, and there's the new rule in HIPAA around AI coming out. And we've already been asked by one of our medical examiners and facilities around the use of this capability. We've got other rules and protections in place to ensure that's completely walled off from a data sharing perspective, but that's coming. And so we can only hold the gates back for so long. So we need to get a sense of how to build the right pathway and the right channels for this, because we had an individual at our BARC facility working with HHS, and they've already been using some AI components in some of their statutes in some of their facilities. So it's creating a little bit of a cross-pollination where our users are going to start putting things out in the sensitive area for data that's not controlled within our walls. Therefore, you're exposing health data of a covered entity without their consent. So I really want to get an idea of how to tackle this significant problem, since we do provide social services and health services to many citizens across the states. I think this is the unknown factor that might cause significant challenges. So I really want to bring that to the group as a really hard conversation we have to have on this.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a really valuable component of that data governance strategy around AI with that HIPAA data.
Dominic, it sounds like you've been dealing with the HIPAA data already. Do you already have some language that you're dealing with it generally in your data governance?
Well, our data governance is in the process of being revamped. When I joined the county last year, I was tasked of rebuilding our governance, as we hadn't had one pre-COVID for quite some time. So actually, the timing has kind of worked in our favor, given that the ARA policy is soon to go adoption enterprise-wide. So it gave us a chance to kind of peel back the layers and see where we are. We're doing our HIPAA assessment now, but our vendor is asking these questions based on the new HIPAA rules that comes around this particular piece for AI and cover entities. And so we've got very specific rules here in our county of how we work with that in terms of separation. So it's still early for us. As I learn more, I'll share some things. But again, I always have to have the auspice of county attorneys and make sure what is permissible to share or not permissible. So that's my guardrail there. So if I share anything, it has to clear several layers before it comes out, basically. I'm sure you all understand that.
No problem,
Yep.
Dominic. I see Nicholas has their hand up, but RT and Jonathan, after that, I'm happy to walk through the templates that we have today and kind of give an overview of where we are at the ground floor to then build off of. Awesome.
Yeah, I can assess to you, sir, we don't have any templates created for any covered entity piece for that. So it's new territory for us. So we like to see what's out there, and I'll use my previous boss's words, to steal shamelessly. We're good with that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas, I see you got your hand up.
Yes. Hello. I'm Nicholas Barkley with the Oregon Judicial Department.
Well, it's a little hard to hear you, Nicholas.
But better now?
A lot better.
Yep.
Turns out having the mic close to your mouth helps. So I'm Nicholas Brackley with the Oregon Judicial Department. I'm interested in understanding the work that's been done in sort of preparing risk assessments right? We're at a stage where we're considering a lot of sort of AI projects, and there are um, a lot of like things that we know we need to do before we go into a project. And I'm wondering if that sort of risk assessment is a function of this committee, and what work, if any, has been done on that, if it is.
And Nicholas, are you thinking about risk assessments relative to like an AI of a system?
Um, yes. So we obviously have risk assessments for projects in general, but how does your risk assessment change when you are dealing with a system which is going to include AI? I obviously have some sense of what those changes entail, um, but just looking forward, um, has work been done on sort of a formal risk assessment process, and is that within the scope of this committee?
So in terms of risk assessment, I'm sure there's a little bit that we can touch on, but I want to highlight a lot of that work has been covered in the coalition already. And I'm just pulling up the template here that might be really useful for you as you're thinking about that work. So I'm just going to put this in the chat here. We have our AI, well, one, we've got all of our current resources here on this page. And one of the areas, Nicholas, that I'd recommend for you is you scroll down to what's called our AI governance handbook on that webpage. And I'll put the PDF link in the chat, but you can also download a Word document there. The governance handbook has all of this content around what's called like an AI impact assessment and how to think about AI risk for any types of systems. That might be a really good place for you to start. And frankly, as we're thinking about in this group and thinking about the data governance component of that, it might be a great place to start there.
Albert, I know that we in San Jose have a risk assessment section to our data sharing agreements template in general, and that pretty much covers just the insurance portion of it, like what are the risks associated, what insurance coverage do we need, both parties need. So it does not really cover AI, and I don't know, Albert, if you're talking to purchasing or anyone in city to add some of the AI components, but that might be a good place for us to have it embedded in our standard templates, at least at the city to begin with.
Yeah.
Could I add one thing to this conversation about risks, and to the gentleman who asked the question? I was asked about a month ago. Some former colleagues are over at GE Health. They are building. How do you audit AI? And this would be tied into your risk piece. So if you have your data inventory of your applications that are AI based and Gen AI or vendor based AI capabilities, how do you tie that into auditing of the system if something changes on the functionality piece? So that was supposed to have been published at their event last month in Chicago. I'll have to go and find out what that is, but that's another important caveat to governance, auditing. And one of the things that we're here in the county is asking, just from a contractual perspective for vendors, on functionality. If something changes to an AI function from a previous functionality that may be used for productivity gains, but also the vendor may change a feature set. We want to track that to see what the impact is to our data sharing models and what impact to data collecting being today. So if a set function is in a product and it's collecting, a subset of data catalog or entitlements as part of its features, and it moves to an AI capability piece, how is it then use that data, or what else will it grab going forward? So that's another piece we're grappling here, as we have many agencies that we share data with. And if that functionality is a very specific data piece that we can track, if the AI grabs that, what changes from a technology, a process, a change, and a data piece. So I think you should add that back to your risk conversation around the auditing piece, because that's another area that we and the CIOs or CISOs have to maintain compliancy, and those rules are still coming out. So that'd be a good piece to add as part of your overall governance strategy.
So I think with that, it might make sense for us to walk through the templates that we are starting with and what that build is going to look like. So I'm going to put these in the chat, and this is something that we've pulled from, and I'll walk through each of these. But basically what we have in our template space right now, and this is in our team space. If you don't have access to it, just message me your email in the chat and we'll be able to get you access. But I'm going to walk through, we have a variety of templates that we are working on here. In regards to the data sharing, here is the template that was actually worked on in phase 2, that now we are using as our jumping off point for phase 3, based on what we saw from TESDEC, or the Texas Data Exchange Compact, as a way to share data across with agencies across an entire state, as an authority that we can use for sharing data across the country, or at least within your neighbors. And if you want to be able to share across neighbors, this serves as a basis. The goal here is that this is something that we can have as a baseline. We create the template. It's something that we share across our agencies. Your legal teams look at it, and while you might want to add a few things, you might want to add a little extra layers on top of it. This serves as a baseline, so that way it becomes a lot easier to share data across coalition agencies. So over the course of the next 6 months, basically, we'll be going through this template, editing it, making sure that it actually applies to us. And we want to start putting in all of our jurisdiction-specific considerations, all of our concerns, questions. This is an opportunity for us to take this living, breathing document, tear it apart, and have it be something that can sit well across our agencies. So we'll be going through this in terms of data sharing. Again, this is just a starting point. We're using this because this worked for the state of Texas. But it's ours to update, change, and evolve as we see fit. And to the points that have been brought up here, bring into it any AI considerations that we might want to have. I'll stop talking, give people opportunities for questions, and RT and Jonathan to jump in. And in the meantime, I'll be adding a lot of folks to the doc.
I do have a question when it comes to these data sharings. Most of us have different attorneys we work with. Anything that we look at has to meet our rules for the county, legal requirements, all that whole thing there. So this is just a high level baseline that we can just kind of take and butcher within our own environments and make it ours, basically, because there's a process for these things that have to go through a whole thing, general counsel, counties. There's a lot of things we have to go through here. I'm sure you have to go through that too as well. But this is just high level stuff. And if you're using NIST, you should look at also the NIST AI framework as well when it comes to breach policy. I've just seen it on your notes there. I'm just curious that, when you have this template, it's going to be tweaked for our county, our constituents, our legal rules. So I just want to make sure that it's high enough and plain enough for us to take and make the modifications we have to within our own areas. Is that I'm seeing some heads nod, so I guess I'm on the right path with that, correct? Okay, good. Thank you. eventually answered my own question.
And Dominic, all we ask is as much as you can, if we can do some of that butchering here on the template directly, because the more refining and editing that we can do here, hopefully the better that it can apply across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And for those in the chat, thank you for some of the comments there on the link for auditing. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome, Dominic.
So Albert, just a quick question about, because you were giving the specific example about the data sharing policy or agreement template. Is the idea that we would kind of do a similar process of going through different data governance documents that are in that folder that you mentioned? But you were just saying starting with the data sharing.
Yeah. So, RT and Jonathan, I'll look towards you on if we want to keep it as like one big group here in this meeting, and maybe we do some breakout rooms, or if we want to have multiple meetings a month. But exactly, like in here, focus on this data sharing agreement, and then in parallel doing the same type of dissecting on, and I'll just pull up an example document here. This is a template data governance policy that has been donated by the state of Colorado. And a variety of documents underneath it that have been donated across our agencies. So in the same area, you have this exhibit from San Diego around data governance and compliance in terms of, Jonathan, you can speak to this better than I can, but my understanding for in contractual requirements with like other third parties, alongside like an implementation checklist and I believe we have data governance manual. So being able to provide this plug and play resources across the board for both that internal data. I think the best way to think about it is that internal data governance and then that external data governance when you're actually sharing the data.
I like how you framed it, Albert. Like data governance is more for the internal versus the data sharing that we'll be discussing is more for the external portion of it. And I think it feels like there's a lot of momentum and interest in the data sharing, which is more external because there are just a lot of stuff happening in that space. So maybe we can focus a lot of our discussion primarily on data sharing for this committee to begin with. And as I think we might have to do a little bit of whiteboarding internally to figure out how we shape the data governance conversation, because it's too broad at this moment, and we might have to break it down into more smaller components and have more focused discussions even within the data governance at large. So maybe we'll start with the data governance policy templates that people have that we can share out to begin with, and then maybe break it down to smaller components from there and have more deeper discussions later on. That, at least that's my initial thought on this.
So RT, maybe starting in the next meeting, what we can do is we can just have 2 split breakout rooms, one on sharing, one on governance. And then what we've done in the past, RT, correct me if that was
I'm not, I think we probably need to, we should just keep it to one for now until we have a better flow for data governance. It seems like it's still pretty high level and we need to still gain what the areas of interest are in terms of data governance, and then maybe we can split from there.
Okay. Then are you saying we focus on the data sharing doc templates first?
First, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And what we've done in the past for those that are new to the coalition is we do exactly what we're having here. We get a bunch of folks onto the same live editing Word document right here, and we go through the sections, we talk through them, and we edit them in real time, so that we can put together a better template. You can see people have already added comments. These are things that we can then take back and edit amongst the committee leadership. But this is a way for us to actually get the feedback here in the meeting. We do the work here, build out the template. And Nicholas, I think the way that you are framing it is it's a exact understanding. Yeah.
Thanks. I think there might be some value in like bullet pointing the sub points for data governance, as already mentioned. It's so broad.
Yeah.
Maybe like figuring out some specific data governance deliverables might be valuable there.
Yeah, and Nicholas, I'm thinking like we in San Jose are trying to put together a data governance, like we have a data governance policy that's almost about to go live, to be published, and then we are trying to put together our own internal committees. So I'm thinking maybe next meeting I can bring that to this group and discuss some of those subgroups that we've created internally and see if that aligns with the group here, or if we want to tweak those and create our own version of it for this committee. But we can start with that at least.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then Albert, for data sharing, like for our internal discussions, we've had there are two different terms that have come up for data sharing, like the data sharing agreement versus a terms of service. Do we want to split that up and identify, what are the scenarios when we would use a data sharing agreement versus a terms of service, which might be a faster processing for sharing some information, and have templates for both?
Sure. What do we have a baseline or someone who's done a terms of service that we can base it off of to start with?
Ali brought it up, so I can ask him if he has anything that we can start with.
Okay. Awesome.
And then if someone has examples to share with the committee, Albert and Artie, is there a central place that they can share those documents with the group?
Yes. So any templates can be shared in our data governance committee. Hold on, let me see if I can zoom in here. We have within the coalition file space, we have a resources for data sharing and resources for data governance. For data governance, we've already, Jonathan, thank you. Thank RT, and I think I saw Anthony just join, have added their resources here, which is things that you can, if you're looking for an example to base off of while we're building the templates, this is a great place to start. And same thing for data sharing, which Anthony has already added in some work here that I think we can use as a baseline for potentially some of that. Forgive me, Art, did you say terms of service, terms of agreement?
Terms of service.
Terms of service on top of the data sharing agreement itself. Awesome. Great, then it sounds like in our next meeting, we can get into directly editing these documents. In the meantime, feel free to add comments specifically to the data sharing side of things, because that's where we'll focus at the beginning. And then yeah, is there anything we missed? Great. And yes, we need to just I don't believe we have a Slack channel for for this committee yet. I will create that in a moment, and we can so folks can have conversation there as well. So RT, Jonathan, Anthony, others, please feel free to jump in, but it sounds like we are good to go here, with next steps being we're going to look through the TESDEC data sharing agreement, add your comments, let's build that off as our template there, and then in the next meeting we'll go through that, continue to edit live, and talk through the terms of service type, what additional content we need for that data sharing to be possible. Awesome. Great. Anything else, RT, Jonathan?
No, nothing else. We're off to a good start.
And we have a plan of action, so we're good.
Thank you all. And just a quick, because Anthony, I know you just joined late, but if you wanted to introduce yourself, you know, we have our board advisors here from the coalition, Jonathan and Anthony. You know, you've seen Jonathan on the call, but Anthony had to join late. Did you want to quick introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can say hi. Hey everyone, apologies for my tardiness. I had 11:30 that I had to make, so sorry that I missed half the meeting. But I'm Anthony Fisher. I'm the Data Governance and AI Program Manager for the Colorado Department of Revenue. So for any of my Colorado folks, reach out to me. Would love to connect and chat. And I'm also a board member and the board advisor for this committee. So happy to be here. Love talking anything data sharing, data governance related. That's kind of my jam. So always happy to talk about that stuff.
Awesome. All right, we'll send this out in an email afterwards. Thank you for taking the time, and excited for us to really get started on the data sharing side.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us. Have a wonderful Easter Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.